The pen in Lauren Carter's hand froze as the computer screen flashed a red warning, "System integrity threat detected." In that instant, the entire 58th floor of the office fell into absolute silence, and no one but her understood that those words had just touched a fear, long buried, an old, deep memory she had kept hidden for years. Yet no one knew that in just a few hours the woman flagged by the system would be the one poised to change the entire U.S. aviation industry. Morning in Chicago poured through the wide glass windows of the Sky Shield Systems headquarters like a stream of pale gold. The sunlight reflected off the walnut desk, where Lauren sat motionless like a sculpture, but her heart raced each beat, echoing in her chest like the wheels of an airplane touching the runway. The room smelled familiar wood, freshly printed paper, and the cold metallic scent of high technology. Behind her, the city stretched endlessly, steel and glass, skyscrapers piercing the sky, a constant reminder that to rise, one must pay a price. Lauren Carter, 40 years old, the first black woman to lead a multi-billion-dollar aviation tech company, and in the eyes of most of the world still not fully accepted. She swiped lightly on her tablet. The latest quarterly financial report appeared, the numbers scrolling like a symphony reaching its climax. She had spent 10 years building Sky Shield, an artificial intelligence system that could predict flight incidents 48 to 72 hours in advance, a dream once dismissed as unrealistic, overly ambitious, and worst of all, a black woman trying to do this. She had heard it hundreds of times, but this morning it rang like an echo from the past. Outside the windows, planes taxied on O'Hare's runways, each silver aircraft slicing through the air like steel arrows. Watching them, Lauren saw herself persistent, unyielding, and determined to break through layers of clouds before being truly seen. The office door opened. Evan Lewis, 35, her assistant, stepped in, his gaze a mix of admiration and concern. He had been with her 7 years and knew that when Lauren was silent, a storm was brewing. "Here's your schedule," Evan said softly. "Horizon Air 482 departs at 1:15, and the Horizon CEO just confirmed via email that they will meet you in San Francisco tonight." Lauren nodded, but Evan hesitated, as if holding back something. She tilted her head. "What is it?" Evan drew a breath. "There are internal rumors. Some veteran pilots are resisting the implementation of Sky Shield. Some say they don't want a system controlled by a woman who's never been in the cockpit." The words were sharp, familiar, like knives. Lauren had thought herself immune, but she wasn't. She smiled lightly, though her eyes were cold. "Evan, you know the funniest part. They'll still have to rely on this system to keep their planes safe. They're afraid of losing power. That's all." Evan forced a smile. "They don't know you're the largest shareholder at Horizon." "Not yet," Lauren said, closing her tablet, "but soon." When Lauren stood, the building seemed to shrink beneath her. A slender woman moving with powerful steps, as if walking on the runway of her own life. Memories long buried surfaced despite the years. A small apartment in Southside, a damp winter, the wind whipping against the windows. Her mother, Angela Carter, arriving home near midnight, exhausted, yet her eyes bright as she saw 10-year-old Lauren hunched over her studies by the window, watching the planes again. "Yes, I just want to know what it feels like to be up there." Angela hugged her daughter, whispering, "You won't just fly, Lauren. You will make others fly safely. Do you hear me? You were born to do great things." Those words had stayed with Lauren all her life, even after her mother's sudden death from a stroke after a 16-hour flight, even after career counselors mocked her aviation dreams, even after colleagues stole her ideas, and the world told her a black woman should know her place. She had never forgotten. She never would. A phone vibration brought her back to the present. A message from the market intelligence team, Sky Shield performance at 93%. Horizon has not fully implemented. Volatility rising. Volatility. Clear enough Horizon was unsteady. Minor incidents increasing veteran pilots, resisting competitors trying to sabotage the Sky Shield contract. Lauren looked at the alert as if seeing opportunity. When the business falters, the truly powerful emerge. She whispered, "Time to board." The elevator carried her to the lobby where the bustle of guests passed by, oblivious to the black woman in the navy suit who was the mind behind the world's most advanced aviation safety system. To any passerby, she appeared simply as a successful businesswoman. But no one knew she held enough shares to control an entire airline's leadership. No one knew she was about to board a flight where the fate of an entire industry would be rewritten. And no one knew that in just a few hours, those who had underestimated her most would bow before the truth of their own eyes. Outside the building, Evan's car waited. Wind lifted strands of Lauren's hair across her calm face. She paused a moment, looking back at the building she had built from nothing. Then she stepped into the car. The Chicago sky above glinted metallic gray, the color of what was about to be broken and rebuilt. Lauren closed her eyes not to rest, but to prepare. She knew one thing: power is not given. Power is taken. Today aboard Horizon Air 482, she would take it all. As Lauren stepped out of the car, the piercing cold wind from O'Hare Terminal cut straight across her face, like an invisible hand testing her composure. And then it happened. Not a storm of weather, but a storm of eyes. The kind she had grown far too familiar with: suspicion, judgment, evaluation, before a single word was spoken. The automatic glass doors slid open, and the chaotic airport world swallowed her like a tumultuous sea, where every sound from the announcements to the clattering of rolling suitcases merged into the rhythm of a busy morning. Yet to Lauren, those sounds meant little, compared to the quiet pulse of her intuition, a subtle alert that today would not be an ordinary flight. Check-in counter where prejudice always arrives on time. In Horizon Air's business class check-in area, the line was short, but the bias was unmistakable, etched as clearly as floor markings. Lauren approached the priority counter, passport and platinum membership card in hand. The agent, Brad Miller, 32, tapped away on his keyboard. As he looked up at her, approaching, his gaze slid over her face and down her navy suit. A fleeting moment, but Lauren recognized it instantly. Not the polite glance reserved for VIP clients, but the kind that tries to determine if you truly belong where you are. Brad tilted his head, repeating a familiar line, one she would remember tonight like a bitter prophecy. "Are you in the correct line? Light as air, but sharp as a blade." Lauren's heartbeat didn't skip. She had lived with these words long enough not to waver. "First class, Lauren Carter," she said, placing her membership card on the metal tray. Brad examined the card, then Lauren, then back to the card, as if searching for an anomaly. He began typing slowly, each keystroke deliberate. "You're certain this is a first-class reservation?" "Absolutely," Lauren replied, calm enough to give him pause over whether he should continue doubting. Meanwhile, at the adjacent counter, a white man in a grey suit approached. In less than 40 seconds, he was greeted, warmly rehearsed to perfection. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore." "Off to San Francisco as usual. I'll check you in right away. No ID check. No questioning. No verification." Lauren watched from the corner of her eye. Expression unchanged, though inside her pulse was silent, but steady, same as always. Brad finally printed her boarding pass and pushed it toward her without looking up security to the right. Next, she didn't need an apology, only to remember. Security checkpoint where they call it random, but Lauren knew nothing was truly random. The priority line moved quickly until she reached the officer. The TSA agent scanned her boarding pass, furrowing his brow. "Ma'am, please proceed to enhanced screening." No words were necessary. Lauren already knew what was coming. "Just random," the agent said with an indifferent smile, signaling her to step into the full body scanner. Random. She had heard it many times before. Another female officer approached from behind. "Raise your hands. Also, I need to check your hair." Gloved fingers, probing as if seeking something hidden, deep in her curls, movements rough and impatient. But what hurt more than the hands was the glance from passers-by, the type of look that had already defined her as suspicious. When they finished, she said softly, just enough that they might not hear, "Thank you. I'm used to it. First-class lounge privileges, not meant for everyone." The Horizon Air Lounge doors opened, revealing luxury interiors with leather seating, fine whiskey, and soft piano music. Lauren chose a window seat and opened her tablet to review her speech for tonight's award ceremony. Within 5 minutes, an attendant approached. "Ma'am, this area is for first-class passengers only." Lauren looked up, placing her boarding pass on the table, saying nothing. The attendant glanced, nodded slightly, and walked away without a word of apology. 15 minutes later, another approached, asking the same thing. Lauren closed her tablet, not out of anger, but to conserve energy for battles far more important. In the far corner, 2 businessmen whispered, "Affirmative action, No way someone like her paid for first class." Lauren heard every word, yet kept a calm, impassive expression, like still water, while beneath the surface, the tide of old familiar doubts swirled, decades of being measured and judged. Announcement over the speakers. Horizon Air, Flight 482 to San Francisco first class, and priority passengers, please proceed to gate C12. Lauren stood, adjusted her collar, and felt something strange. Not fear, not anger, but a thin, anticipatory mist, a premonition. Something awaited her ahead, not good, but necessary. She stepped out of the lounge, blending with passengers heading to C12. Light from the ceiling fell across her face, eyes glinting like steel. Then she heard the name over the speaker. Today's flight commanded by Captain Daniel Price, veteran pilot with 25 years' experience. Lauren froze for a heartbeat. Captain Price. The name. The man. The one who had stood in the boardroom 6 months ago, telling the executive team that her technology was unsafe, that a woman like her could not understand responsibility in the air. The one who had looked at her as though the future of aviation could not rest in the hands of a black woman. Lauren gripped her bag strap lightly, a warning sign this flight would not be ordinary and could very well mark the turning point of her life. The airport around her continued its noisy swirl, but in Lauren's mind, one thought resonated as clearly as a plane's wheels striking the runway. Let them underestimate her once more. For they did not yet know she was not just a first-class passenger. She held the fate of the entire airline in her own hands, and they were about to discover it in the most painful way possible. As Lauren approached Gate C12, she felt a familiar sensation she had hoped to leave behind, a strange, expectant silence before a storm. Not a storm of weather, but a storm of human eyes, a barrage always directed at those deemed out of place. Gate C12 glowed under cold white LEDs, passengers gathering behind the stanchions, the mingled sounds of announcements, rolling suitcases and children pleading for candy, forming a rhythm Lauren had heard hundreds of times. Yet today it felt different. Today, it was a warning. The first glance. Lauren stepped into the first-class priority line. An elderly couple ahead of her was greeted with warm, practiced smiles from the gate agent Karen Doyle, 38 platinum blonde hair, neatly styled a smile honed through hundreds of flights. "Have a wonderful flight," Karen said, in a tone so friendly it could have been studio recorded. But when Karen turned to Lauren, the smile vanished completely, instantly, invisibly to anyone not paying close attention. Lauren noticed immediately. "Boarding pass and ID, Karen," said her voice, flat and cold. Lauren handed them over calmly, as though this were a procedure ingrained since childhood. Karen glanced at her ID, but that glance said more than words. A black woman alone, neat luggage, smart suit, but no overt designer branding. Not the standard image of a first-class passenger in Karen's eyes. Yet she maintained professionalism until she spoke again. "This is the first-class lane." "You do know that, right?" The question was not for confirmation. It was a reminder. Evan had told her, "You'll have to get used to this." Lauren knew he was trying to protect her, but it was hard to get used to suspicion in every step, every glance. She pressed her lips into a small, polite smile. "I know," she said, placing her boarding pass in Karen's hands with a calmness that made the agent hesitate. Karen scrutinized the pass longer than necessary, as if hoping to find a mistake, a reason to say, "You're in the wrong line." But the pass was flawless, and finally the scanner beeped. A normal beep, but to Karen it felt like a light slap to her own bias. She returned the documents with a reluctant nod. "You may proceed if you wish." If you wish. Redundant words, and Lauren knew they were no accident. The jet bridge, the hallway of instincts. Lauren walked into the jet bridge air conditioning gusts, whistling through the metal tube like the airport itself exhaling. In that moment, Lauren felt a thin layer of invisible mist drape her shoulders. No one needed to tell her, but she could see clearly something very strange was unfolding today. Not the minor incidents at check-in, not the whispered doubts in the lounge, but the whole system seemed aligned to make her feel out of place, as if a hand were guiding it all. She lightly touched her small suitcase fingers, growing cold. Her instinct, the one that had saved her in hundreds of negotiations and dozens of acquisitions, was warning her. Her steps quickened, not hurried but decisive. Threshold of first class, where prejudice is wrapped in warm towels. Chief Flight Attendant Patricia Long stood at the aircraft door, 50 years old, grey-blonde hair tied back, a posture shaped by 25 years of service and the belief that experience needed no instruction. "Welcome aboard, ma'am." Her words caught as she saw Lauren, her eyes briefly flickering with analysis, calculation, and doubt, as if Lauren were a sudden test of fate she did not want to pass. "Boarding pass, please." Not a greeting, but an examination. Lauren handed over her pass. Patricia's gloved hand took it with undisguised caution, and then a small but telling detail. She inspected Lauren's boarding pass far longer than the white businessman before her, who had been waved through with only "Enjoy, sir." Returning the pass, Patricia said, First class is to the left. You understand a question echoing Karen's, a frightening coincidence. Lauren did not answer the rude remark. She only looked straight at Patricia, a faint but sharp smile, as if seeing through the mask. Patricia hesitated for half a second, then gestured her through, but Lauren had already seen Patricia was judging her. Incorrectly. On the wrong person. The moment 1A appeared. Seat 1A at the front of the first-class cabin, a large brown leather seat, faintly scented new lights reflecting the Horizon Air logo on the partition. Lauren felt a strange thrill, not because of the seat, but because she knew she had chosen this seat 3 months ago, the only one she always selected. A position with a clear view of the cabin, easy access to exits a seat for someone who needed to control the situation. She opened the overhead compartment, placing her suitcase, when she heard, "Excuse me," Patricia's voice, no longer polite, no longer neutral, carrying a subtle accusation. "There may be a mistake. This is a first-class seat." Lauren turned her gaze icy. "I know," she said, presenting her 1A boarding pass again. Patricia inspected it, as if searching for evidence it had been printed at home. Then a man's confident, authoritative voice came from behind. "I believe you are in my seat." 1A. Lauren turned. A white man over 50, in an expensive suit with a burgundy pocket square. James Walker. His smile carried the confidence of someone who believed he was right, even without looking at his own pass. He extended it like a winning card. Patricia immediately turned to him, taking the pass carefully, inspecting it, but her gaze was completely different from when she held Lauren's, a gaze of trust. Both boarding passes marked Wasname. No system error. But someone did this intentionally. Lauren's nerves tensed. She knew this was no coincidence, not at all. Captain appears and all boundaries come to light. What's going on here? Captain Daniel Price, the man who had told the board 6 months ago that Sky Shield was unreliable because it was designed by a woman, stepped out of the cockpit. His eyes flickered briefly as he looked at Lauren, a flash no one else noticed. But Lauren did. He knew her, and he was not pleased to see her here. Patricia explained the seat conflict. Price examined James's pass respectfully, while Lauren's was treated as if it were a discarded flyer. "Mr. Walker checked in last night. Company priority," he concluded. "I reserved this seat 3 months ago," Lauren said, her voice low but firm. Captain Price didn't bother listening. "First class is full. We have economy at the rear. You may move there." A few passengers smirked. A woman whispered, "Some people just don't know their place." Lauren stood tall. In that moment, she was not a passenger, not a victim, but a bomb ticking down before their eyes. She only said one thing: "I would like to speak with you privately, Captain Price." The captain waved dismissively, cutting her off. "No. If you do not comply, you may leave the plane." And that was the moment Lauren understood the power game had begun. But they had no idea who they were facing. Lauren reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone. Her voice was light as a breeze. "No need. I just need to make a call." And with that single step backward, everything was already decided. The call lasted only 26 seconds. But in the first 10, Lauren Carter had already shifted the trajectory of the entire flight. No one in the passenger cabin knew. No one in the crew anticipated it. And certainly Captain Price never saw it coming. Seat by the lavatory where those deemed out of place are assigned. When Lauren returned to the economy cabin, dozens of eyes fell on her, not out of curiosity, but because they believed she had been sent back to her proper place. Some looked on with vague pity, others with quiet satisfaction, the satisfaction of those convinced their familiar order was being preserved. Lauren walked to the last row. The seat was small, her knees nearly touching the seat in front. Next to her by the window sat a young woman in a grey sweatshirt, a thin backpack slung over her shoulders. Maya Brooks, 24. Maya's eyes widened at the sight of a first-class passenger sitting next to her. Then she smiled gently, as if she had occupied this exact place too many times before. "You got sent back here too?" Maya asked, her voice shy but sympathetic. Lauren responded quietly, keeping her composure. "They think this is where I belong." Maya chuckled, not at humor, but at bitterness. "I know the feeling." Lauren glanced at her, realizing in that moment that this young woman was also living proof of a discriminatory system that had persisted for decades, a call that awakened an earthquake. Lauren's phone still lit up the recipient's name, Victor Hale Horizon Air, CEO. A message arrived immediately. "Are you sure you want to do this mid-flight?" Lauren did not reply. She knew he was panicking. She only wrote, "I am experiencing your airline service in the most authentic way possible," and hung up. Outside the window, the first drops of rain splashed against the fuselage. The storm forecasted was approaching Chicago rapidly. Lauren felt movement inside herself, not anger, but a more dangerous sensation, calm before a battle. Signs of chaos and Sky Shield knew better than anyone. While the economy cabin buzzed with noise, Lauren opened her tablet and logged into Sky Shield Systems' internal network, an access no one else on the plane had. She accessed the Horizon 4A2 flight data. And then engine vibration pattern anomaly. Detection probability, 81%. Maintenance cycle overdue. 13 hours beyond threshold. Recommended route southern corridor. Severe weather conditions detected. Lauren gripped the tablet so tightly her knuckles went white. Captain Price had rejected the safe route. The airline had delayed Sky Shield upgrades for the crew, and now they were about to send hundreds of people into the storm. "Are you okay?" Maya's voice pulled her back to the present. Lauren folded the tablet, her voice soft as a whisper. "I'm fine. But this flight will not depart as they intend. Delays and the silent truth of the crew." The plane sat on the runway for nearly an hour, no announcements beyond a few general statements. "We are addressing minor technical issues. Thank you for your patience." But Lauren knew clearly no technical issue was minor when it involved engine anomaly prediction. She looked around the cabin, children crying from fatigue, women sighing, men checking their watches with irritation. Flight attendants moved back and forth, avoiding passengers' eyes, as if avoiding an uncomfortable truth. Maya worried. "If it takes much longer, I'll miss my Stanford interview." Lauren tilted her head. "What's your field civil rights law?" Maya replied, eyes bright despite exhaustion. "I want to fight for those who are treated unfairly. Like..." She paused, looking at Lauren. "Like you just now." Lauren smiled lightly, both gentle and sad. "You'll fit right in there." Maya nodded, but her gaze drifted forward, anxious. If the plane did not depart on time, she would lose her chance. Lauren looked at that determined, youthful face and felt a quiet, silent promise stir within her. The storm approaches, but the real storm is in the cockpit. 25 minutes passed. Captain Price's voice came over the speakers again. "We are approaching departure. Please remain patient." Moments later, A technician ran under the wing, visible through the window, his expression unusually tense. Then another announcement. Any medical personnel on board, immediate assistance needed. An older passenger in business class was having a heart issue. Lauren closed her eyes. Piece by piece, the information connected into one unshakable truth. Captain Price was attempting to take off at all costs, and that cost could be the safety of everyone on board. Messages from the executive team, and the moment power shifted. Lauren's phone buzzed incessantly. From Evan Lewis, Sky Shield just sent a high-level alert. I think Horizon is hiding a problem. From Sky Shield's CFO. We completed additional share acquisition. You are now the largest shareholder in Horizon Air. From Horizon's board, Chairman Bernard Watkins, CEO Hale, requests to meet you immediately upon landing. Lauren smiled a smile no one could see, but enough to change her own pulse. They thought she would wait until landing. They thought everything was in their hands. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Lauren rises and redefines true power. The economy cabin buzzed as Lauren unbuckled her seatbelt and stood before the plane had permission to move. A flight attendant rushed over. "Ma'am, you cannot stand. We are about to taxi." Lauren looked directly at the attendant, not angry, not raising her voice, only the gaze of someone who knew she held the entire balance of power. "I need to speak with Captain Price, immediately." "No," the attendant shook her head firmly. "This is a restricted area." Lauren spoke each word clearly, metallic in tone. "Then take me to someone who can make Captain Price listen." "And who are you?" Lauren cut him off with a single sentence that silenced the entire cabin. "I am the one who will decide the future of this airline, and of all of you." Her words fell in the cabin like a heavy object. The attendant's jaw dropped. Some passengers turned to her as if facing an undisclosed mystery. Maya stared at her eyes, wide with astonishment and hope. And in that precise moment, the speakers crackled again. Not Captain Price's voice, but the first officer's trembling slightly. "We have just received instructions from Tower. Horizon Flight 482 will return immediately to the gate." The entire cabin erupted in astonished murmurs. Lauren sat back down, buckled in, and in the dim light of the economy cabin, her eyes gleamed like molten steel. "I told you. This flight will not take off the way they wanted." When the announcement came over the speakers to return to the gate, the entire passenger cabin froze for a moment. Not from surprise, but because no one believed a Boeing as large as Horizon 482 could be halted just before takeoff, all from a single phone call that no one understood. But Lauren understood, and Captain Price was beginning to understand. As the plane turned off the runway, the engines throttled down, the fuselage tilted slightly and changed direction. Passengers who had frowned at the delay now leaned toward the windows. Everyone saw the long line of planes waiting for takeoff, but Horizon 482 was being given priority to turn around. A privilege both rare and costly. Maya whispered, eyes wide. "What did you do?" They actually listened to you." Lauren kept her voice calm. "They aren't listening to me. They're listening to someone with authority who they once underestimated." Maya looked at her like a puzzle, still unsolved. Unease spread into the cockpit. Captain Daniel Price slammed the console, the clicks of buttons ringing harshly. "What the hell is this? Who dares intervene with my flight?" His co-pilot, Elliot Marsh, younger and more timid hands, slightly shaking but trying to remain calm, replied, "Tower says, the order comes from very high, very, very high. They say we may not take off." Not take off, Price squinted. While I'm responsible for this aircraft, Elliot swallowed. Captain, I think this is serious. I overheard a technician say, a passenger in economy the back row has been in contact with the Horizon CEO. Price laughed dryly. Nonsense. Just someone trying to make a scene. Yet in that instant, his face twitched imperceptibly, a fear he did not want to admit, because he knew only a handful of people in the world could command tower priority like this. As the plane returned to the gate, the atmosphere changed. A soft hum of murmurs filled the cabin. What's happening? Why are we back? Is there a terrorist threat or a major mechanical issue? But what caused the sudden silence was when Lauren unbuckled her seatbelt and stood while the signal was still on. A flight attendant moved to stop her. Mom, please, sit down. We haven't. Lauren simply looked at her, a gaze that made the attendant swallow her words. Not out of fear, but because in those eyes was something authority, unlike a complaining passenger, unlike an angry one, but the authority of a CEO standing in her own building. Lauren said softly, I need to go forward. You cannot. This is a restricted area, the attendant said. Lauren enunciated each word like metal striking metal. Then take me to someone who can make Captain Price listen. And who are you? Lauren cut him off with a single sentence that silenced the cabin. I am the one who will decide the future of this airline, and all of you. Her words fell like a heavy weight. The attendant gaped. Some passengers turned eyes wide at the mystery unfolding. Maya stared at her astonished and hopeful, and in that very moment, the speakers crackled again. Not Captain Price's voice, but the first officer's trembling slightly. We have just received instructions from Tower. Horizon Flight 482 will return immediately to the gate. The entire cabin erupted in astonished whispers. Lauren sat back down, buckled in, and in the dim economy. Cabin light, her eyes gleamed like molten steel. I told you, this flight will not take off the way they wanted. The moment Captain Price was suspended, the small cockpit transformed into the stage of a trial without a verdict, but everyone knew the sentence had been delivered. Only the defendant had yet to accept defeat. A suffocating silence, then the final outburst of a man about to sink. Daniel Price stood frozen pale, as if he had seen the end of his own life. No more confidence, no more mocking laughter, no more arrogant glances down on others as he had done for 25 years in the skies. Yet that 25-year career was crumbling within minutes. No, this cannot be. He croaked. This is just... Lauren did not need to hear another word. She knew exactly what he was going to say. She turned slowly to him. What are you going to call me? A black passenger, given priority. Someone who doesn't know her place, or someone unworthy of speaking to you. Price gritted his teeth. Watkins' interjected voice sharp. As steel, Captain Price, you are suspended. Everything you say from this point will be recorded. But that only made Price erupt. He did not stay silent. He exploded. You cannot do this to me. I've flown for Horizon 25 years. I have experience. I have achievements. I cannot be replaced by some meaningless technology designed by a he stopped. But it was too late. The entire first-class cabin heard him. The crew heard him. And worse, dozens of passengers behind had raised their phones to record. Lauren looked at him like she was observing the final crack in a wall that had long been rotten. Captain Price, she said slowly, you have just proven to everyone on this plane why you should no longer occupy the cockpit. And in that exact moment, A ripple of astonished murmurs spread through the cabin like an explosion. Passengers stood, and the truth was no longer hidden. As Lauren stepped out of the cockpit, the sight was unforgettable. The entire first class and business cabins were on their feet, eyes glued to her. Not out of curiosity, but shock. Someone whispered, "That's Lauren Carter, CEO of Sky Shield. She just fired the captain on the plane. Oh my God, I'm recording this." Lauren said nothing. She didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself. Chief Flight Attendant Patricia Long, who had once doubted, despised, and tried to push Lauren out of 1A, now approached, flustered. She bowed so deeply, Lauren thought she might kneel. "Ms. Carter, I sincerely apologize. I had no idea." Lauren cut her off, voice light, but icy. "Not knowing is not an excuse to discriminate, especially when this is your job." Patricia clenched her hands, lips trembling. Lauren could see clearly she wasn't remorseful for discriminating. She was remorseful for misjudging the person. James Walker, the secret exposed, and an unexpected twist. At that moment, the cabin speakers crackled airport security boarding the plane. "Please remain calm." 2 security officers appeared at the doorway. They were not there for Captain Price. They were there for James Walker, the man in 1A, the one who had acted as the seat's owner, forcing Lauren to the back of the plane, turned pale. One officer announced loudly, "Mr. James Walker, you are under arrest on suspicion of corporate espionage." The cabin erupted. Walker shouted, "You have no evidence. I'm just a businessman on a work trip." But everything was clear. Summit Airlines had planted a spy on this flight to sabotage the Horizon Sky Shield partnership. Walker had deliberately caused the seating dispute, deliberately instigated tension between passengers and crew, deliberately humiliated Lauren before she could reach San Francisco for her award and strategic signing. A meticulous plan, a plan meant to outsmart everyone. But he had chosen the wrong person. As he was led away in handcuffs, he cast a hateful glance back at Lauren. She returned it calmly, deeply, the ultimate boundary between a schemer and a victor. A new cockpit and the first glimmer of hope. Hale exhaled, turning to Watkins. "We need a replacement, Captain. Immediately." Watkins nodded. "Captain Sarah Jenkins is at the terminal. She'll be on board in 5 minutes." Lauren remembered Jenkins, a seasoned female pilot who had been dismissed and ignored by Captain Price in executive meetings for the familiar reason women aren't strong enough under pressure. Ironically, she was about to save Horizon from a national scandal. Lauren watched as Jenkins boarded, short hair, small frame eyes, sharp and focused like an arrow. A woman with the aura of someone who had fought all her life. Lauren whispered, "Now this is someone worthy of the cockpit." When power speaks, the entire crew gathered before Lauren as if awaiting judgment. But she said nothing immediately. She observed them. Fear, guilt, shame, and transformation. For the first time, they saw her not as a misplaced black passenger, not as a difficult client, but as the person who held their future in her hands. Lauren looked directly at Patricia. "From today, Forward Horizon Air will change, and anyone who wishes to continue flying will have to change with it." No one dared breathe. A young flight attendant began to cry. Another nodded repeatedly, as if finally grasping the most important lesson of their lives. As the plane prepared to take off again, but this time under a new sky, Captain Jenkins stepped out of the cockpit voice firm. "I am the captain in charge of this flight. We will reach San Francisco safely." Passengers applauded, not because they knew the full story, but because they sensed a shift in the air, clear and strong, like a storm passing, and fresh wind rushing in. Lauren was invited back to first class. Patricia, trembling, picked up Lauren's suitcase, handling it as if it were a belated apology. Lauren said nothing. She did not need to forgive in that moment. She only needed one thing change, real change, starting from this very moment. As she sat in seat 1A, the seat once cruelly taken from her, Lauren placed her hands on the armrests. No more trembling. No more anger. Only resolve. For she knew this flight was not just returning to the gate. It was turning around an entire system that had been wrong for far too long, and the one initiating that turnaround was herself. The moment Lauren Carter settled into seat, a thunder cracked outside so loud the cabin windows vibrated. The Chicago sky darkened as if someone had drawn a black curtain over the runway. The storm had arrived at just the right time, and it was more than just weather. It was a perfect reflection of what was happening inside Horizon Air. Lauren looked out. Lightning streaked across the purple-gray sky, like cracks in the old leadership walls of the airline. A wall long shaken, waiting for a single touch to collapse. That touch was her. When everything seemed to return to normal, a new chaos sparked. Passengers whispered in relief as Captain Jenkins took command. Smiles returned to a few faces, children cried less, and first class regained its usual elegance. But Lauren knew the system couldn't be fixed by replacing one person. This problem was bigger than any captain. It lay in Horizon's DNA. A young flight attendant approached, handing Lauren a glass of water, hands still trembling slightly. "Miss Carter, if you need anything, please just ask. We truly apologize for what happened." Lauren observed her, the red-rimmed eyes, the slightly shaking hands, the sincere gaze. Some people were worth saving. Some deserved a second chance. But there were also those who did not. Signals from the cockpit and Price's secrets surfaced further. The cockpit door cracked open for a few seconds, just long enough for Lauren to see Captain Jenkins bent over her screens, face unusually tense. She whispered to co-pilot Elliot, "We still have deviation on engine 2 pressure readings." "How long has Price ignored this?" Elliot replied, rain pattering on the fuselage. "Over 18 hours, Captain." Jenkins inhaled sharply. 18 hours past the threshold. This is no oversight. This is reckless behavior. The cockpit door closed. Lauren closed her eyes for a moment. As she had predicted, Price's secrets were falling apart, piece by piece. And what she now held in her hands was not only shareholder authority, but evidence. A sick passenger, the fear growing in the dark cabin. A flight attendant rushed through first class toward business. "We need a doctor. Is there anyone on board who is a doctor?" Lauren turned. Haggard breaths frantic, coughing a woman crying out to her husband. A young doctor stepped forward quickly. "He has a heart condition. I need to know where his medication is." A flight attendant answered, embarrassed and flustered medication in checked luggage. The doctor froze. "Why didn't you use the manifest system to locate passengers with special medical records?" The attendant went silent. Not because they didn't know, but because they dared not reveal the truth. Captain Price had disabled that feature, claiming it protected privacy. But in reality, he didn't trust Sky Shield's technology. Lauren stood abruptly. Years of labor research and battle to create Sky Shield, a system designed to save people like the unconscious patient just a few rows back, had been undermined by a stubborn, selfish man. Maya, initially in the economy row, ran up to first class, hands shaking. "Miss Lauren, I heard someone sick. Will the plane be safe?" Lauren placed her hand on the girl's shoulder. "Calm. From now on, we have the right people in charge." But she knew Sky Shield was warning far more than anyone imagined. Messages from the Horizon CEO, the fear spreading to the highest levels. Lauren's phone buzzed with a message from CEO Robert Hale. "We are convening an emergency meeting. Passenger footage of Price has gone viral on Twitter. Stock price is dropping. We need you in San Francisco to handle PR. Please." Lauren smirked slightly. Ironically, the man who had once belittled her in the Sky Shield deployment discussion was now pleading, not gloating, not angry, just justice. She typed a reply. "Prepare for change. This is more than a PR crisis. Sent. No waiting for a response. From the shadows, a worse truth approaches." Captain Jenkins's voice rang out firmly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am reassessing all safety parameters. Weather is deteriorating faster than forecasted. Please remain calm." Lauren looked out the window. Lightning exploded. The Chicago sky was no longer grey. It had turned coal black. At that moment, a flight attendant ran up, whispering into Patricia's ear-face, paling. "Captain Price, has he left the plane?" "Yes." Security escorted him off. "No. I just saw he's arguing with someone on the jet bridge." Patricia went pale. Lauren heard every word. A chill ran down her spine, not fear, but the foreboding of something worse forming. Captain Price was returning not to apologize, not to lament his career, but because he knew that if Lauren reached San Francisco tonight, every mistake of his would be exposed to the world. Lauren stood striding quickly toward the first-class cabin. Patricia called out, "Ms. Carter." "You can't go thunder." Lauren turned, eyes cold but blazing. "I need to make sure he doesn't ruin anything else." The second confrontation and the dark Chicago night bore witness. As Lauren reached the front of the cabin, Captain Price's silhouette appeared behind the glass of the jet bridge. He was arguing with two security officers. "I need to speak to Hale to Watkins. They cannot let that person decide my fate." The words that person made Lauren pause. An attendant nearby, witnessing the scene, whispered, "He's losing control." Lauren stepped forward, just one step, but enough for the security officers to see. "Ms. Carter, keep your distance." Price saw her before they could react. He spun around, eyes bloodshot, hair, disheveled face twisted in defeat. "It's you. You destroyed my career. You don't deserve this." "You just," Lauren's voice, cut through low but louder than the thunder outside. "Say one more word, and it becomes permanent evidence in your termination file." Price clenched his fists, but he remained silent. Not out of respect, but because he knew every word spoken before the camera in this moment would be the end. Lauren looked straight into his eyes for the first time with no anger. Only the truth. "You destroyed your own career. I only lifted the veil for everyone to see." Thunder cracked again. White light flashed across Price's face, revealing every fissure of collapsing arrogance. Security led him away, permanently removed from the plane and from the skies. Lauren turned back to the cabin. Maya stood there, eyes wide, like a child seeing a comic book hero come to life. How are you so strong?" Lauren inhaled deeply. The ozone of the storm filled the air. "Not strong, Maya. I simply do not allow others' prejudices to determine my fate." The cabin rumbled as engines powered up. Captain Jenkins announced, "We will not fly into the storm. We will wait for a safe weather window." The entire cabin exhaled. Lauren sat back in seat 1A, fastened her seatbelt, And in that silent moment, she wondered, would this flight, with all its chaos, anger, discrimination, and revealed truths, mark a turning point for Horizon Air? The answer was unclear, but she knew one thing: she would make it so, by any means necessary. As the engines of Horizon 482 roared for the third time on that darkened afternoon, no one in the cabin knew they were about to witness a moment that would become the focus of the entire United States within hours. No one except Lauren Carter. Outside, the sky opened a narrow shaft of light like a crack in the storm wall over Chicago. The faint beam slipped across the frame of seat 1A, illuminating Lauren's face, as if whispering, "It's time." Passengers exchanged glances, from doubt to respect. The first-class cabin was unusually silent, not because of the storm, but because of what they had just witnessed. They had seen a woman humiliated, pushed to the back of the plane, scrutinized, ignored, yet also seen her stand unshaken, safeguard the safety of the entire flight, confront Captain Price in the cockpit, and control the situation with a few carefully chosen words. A businessman behind Lauren whispered to his wife, "Did you see how she spoke to the Horizon CEO? It's like she's the real boss." Lauren heard it, clearly said nothing, her eyes fixed on the dim sky, where the plane was preparing to taxi once more. Captain Jenkins, the woman in the seat Price had once barred. Her voice came over the speakers, firm and unwavering. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am the captain in charge of Flight 482. We are ready. Weather has opened a safe window, and we will be taking off within minutes." The power in her tone was instantly recognizable to Lauren, the voice of someone who had fought her entire life for this position, and had finally been granted authority. Co-pilot Elliot reported quickly, "Wind shear decreasing, wind-stable southern radar clearer." Jenkins nodded, eyes bright, "Initiate takeoff procedures." Lauren followed every sound, every movement, as if witnessing a transfer of power right before her eyes, from a blind, prejudiced man to a woman truly worthy. Takeoff, but on social media, another storm was brewing. As the Boeing surged down the runway, rattling under the force of the wind, Lauren received a cascade of messages on her phone. She switched to silent mode, yet could see the screen flashing Twitter. Horizon Hosen 1 to Motisari 2. Trending #3 nationwide. Video of Captain Price shouting shared over 600,000 times in 20 minutes. Sky Shield AI group chat. Lauren, the press is calling non-stop. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, Fox. How should we respond? Horizon CEO hail. Please be careful arriving at SFO. The media has gathered at the gate. Lauren inhaled. She had anticipated this. She had prepared for this. But still, her heartbeat slowed for a moment, not from pressure, but from knowing the time had come to fully reveal herself. She opened her phone for a second and saw a tweet from a business-class passenger, black female CEO, pushed to economy but saved the flight. This isn't ordinary. This is the story America needs to hear. Lauren exhaled softly, a heavy sigh. This was the explosion point. No turning back. A conversation that changed two fates, Lauren and Maya. Once the plane reached stable altitude, Maya, the young economy passenger, was invited by a flight attendant to the empty seat next to Lauren. As she sat, she almost choked on her words. "Miss Lauren, I don't even know what to say. I've never seen anyone do that." Lauren smiled lightly. "You know, Maya, when I was your age, I also thought I had no power." Maya turned, eyes still red from emotion. "But you're strong," Lauren shook her head. "I was only tired from being underestimated for so long. One day you'll realize strength isn't innate. It's built from the wounds you endure." Maya swallowed hard. Do you think I could really become a civil rights lawyer? Lauren looked at her for a long moment, seeing all the dreams still unformed, all the fears hidden beneath her determination. Not only can you, Lauren said you must. Maya lowered her head, hands clutching her coat, the gesture of someone holding hope with all her heart. Another secret revealed, and Lauren realized Price had not acted alone. As Maya returned to her seat to fetch her belongings, Lauren reopened her tablet. Sky Shield was still running real-time flight data, but one detail darkened her expression. Unauthorized access, detected pilot terminal logs, user attempt, or Price, maintenance override. Price had accessed the maintenance control system just 1 hour before boarding. He had deliberately misreported the safety status to prevent Sky Shield from detecting faults. Lauren felt a chill run down her spine, not because of Price, but because something far more frightening. No pilot could do this alone. There was another account aiding him. Someone inside Horizon had deliberately helped Price hide the maintenance error. This was no longer a personal mistake. It was a systemic violation. Lauren gripped her tablet tightly. The storm outside had passed, but the real storm was still waiting for her in San Francisco. Captain Jenkins, the voice of a new future. Her voice came again over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have cleared the bad weather zone. The sky ahead is clear. Rest assured, I will bring us to San Francisco ahead of schedule." Passengers applauded, not because of the schedule, but because they trusted this voice more than any they had heard on the flight. Lauren watched Captain Jenkins through the cockpit window. She saw her mother, herself, all the women who had ever been told, "You don't belong here." And she knew this was living proof of why Sky Shield needed to lead Horizon Air into the future, with strength, with ethics, and with truth. A rare moment of calm before the next battle. Lauren leaned back in her seat. For the first time during this chaotic journey, she allowed herself 10 seconds of relaxation. Eyes closed. Breathing slowed. But the instant her eyes shut, her phone vibrated a message from Board Chairman Watkins. "Prepare your statement upon landing. The press is gathered at the SFO gate, and rumors say rival Summit Air has released a story attacking you. A media war is beginning." Lauren opened her eyes. In them there was no worry. Only fire. "They want to fight." "Fine, I've been on the battlefield my whole life." She straightened her collar, tightened her seatbelt. Horizon 482 surged forward through the darkened sky, and in seat 1A, the woman they had once tried to push near the lavatory was preparing to rewrite the history of the entire aviation industry. As the wheels of Horizon 482 touched down on the San Francisco runway, the plane tilted slightly, then straightened like the first exhale after a suffocating storm. But Lauren Carter knew this was not a sign of an ending. It was the overture, the opening notes for the battle she had spent her entire life preparing to face. San Francisco at dusk was a blend of sea mist and fractured golden sunset, but today it was anything but gentle. It was bustling loud waiting for her. Outside the window of seat 1A, Lauren saw a long line of media vehicles along the tarmac, camera lights flashing like artificial lightning. A flight attendant swallowed nervously. "Oh my, she's famous already." Patricia Long stood still, her eyes no longer filled with derision, but with a mixture of respect, fear, and awakening. Lauren exhaled slowly. She knew that when the aircraft door opened, she would step into the center of a nation stirred by injustice, discrimination, and the arrogance of those who thought they were untouchable. But she did not shy away. She walked straight into it. The seatbelt sign dinged off, and the moment of authority was established. Captain Jenkins's voice came over, clearly commanding, "Welcome to San Francisco. We will pause briefly for security procedures. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is off." As the ding sounded, nearly half the passengers rose, almost simultaneously, not to retrieve luggage, but to look back at Lauren. A middle-aged man, one who had looked at her with suspicion in the Chicago lounge, raised his hand, not to wave, but to applaud. One clap, then another, and then the entire first-class cabin erupted in applause that echoed throughout the plane. Lauren said nothing, only placing her hand over her heart in silent thanks. This respect was not pity, not fleeting admiration. It was recognition. The recognition she had fought 20 years to earn. Passengers from economy, the ones who had sat near Lauren, emerged as witnesses. The cabin door opened, and Maya Brooks ran up carrying her worn backpack. She gasped, "I can't let you step out alone." Lauren turned, smiling warmly enough to dissolve the tension. "Thank you, Maya." Maya looked at her, like the first star breaking through a dark sky. "I'll tell this story at Stanford. I'll say I saw justice done on a flight." Lauren placed her hand lightly but firmly on her shoulder. "Not just justice, Maya. Justice is made. People like you will carry it forward." Maya swallowed hard, holding on to her coat, the gesture of someone grasping hope with all her heart. Not out of weakness, but because she realized she stood beside someone who had imparted a lesson no book could teach: courage in the face of injustice through strategy, not just anger. The airplane door opened, and California witnessed a shockwave. Click. The fuselage door swung wide. Flashing lights poured into the cabin like snow from a bright white sky. Reporters jostled cameras aimed directly at the doorway, chaos erupting. "It's her Lauren Carter is stepping out. Clear the way. Replay the moment she steps out. Horizon 482. The flight of the year." A security officer looked at Lauren Ms. Carter. "We will escort you separately." Lauren shook her head. "No. I do not avoid the truth. I step straight through this door." The officer's eyes widened. Rarely does anyone dare face the media. At the moment, a scandal explodes. But Lauren, she was not ordinary. She stepped out, and dozens of lights hit her like sunlight, amplified 1,000-fold. The executive waiting, and a trial without a jury. At the bottom of the stairway, CEO Robert Hale and Chairman Bernard Watkins waited. Hale's face was paler than when Price confronted him before. His sleeves wrinkled, tie loose, sweat beading on his temples. Watkins, calmer, but his eyes betrayed fatigue, stood straight, hands behind his back, like a general awaiting a battle report. As Lauren approached, Hale said, "Ms. Carter, we are deeply sorry. We never imagined something like this could happen within our own airline." Lauren studied him long enough for Hale to drop his gaze. "You never imagined because you never looked closely," Lauren said slowly. "These acts of discrimination are not new. They simply had never been recorded, never exposed." Watkins stepped forward. "We need you in an emergency meeting tonight. Everything is moving too fast." Lauren interrupted, voice soft but firm enough to halt a media storm. "I will attend, but first I will speak to the press." Hale blinked. You want to make a statement immediately, without preparation. We need a formal release." Lauren looked at him like an adult, gazing at a child trying to hide a mistake. "I do not need preparation. I speak the truth. And sometimes the truth requires no thick file. It only requires enough courage to speak it." The press conference the moment an entire industry had to face itself. Lauren approached the temporary podium at the terminal exit. Dozens of microphones pointed at her like a forest of steel. Reporters asked, "Ms. Carter, can you confirm you experienced racial discrimination on the flight? Did Captain Price really jeopardize the safety of the flight? Was Horizon 482 an organizational failure or individual negligence?" "Will you sue Horizon?" Lauren raised her hand. Silence fell. The San Francisco sea breeze blew gently. Salt mist caressed her hair. And Lauren said, "I was underestimated. I was judged. I was pushed out of a seat I had paid for." Every microphone captured each word, amplifying it into the air. "But the issue is not me. It is the system. A system that suspects people like me before respecting them." Reporters wrote down every word. On that flight, I saw safety protocols ignored, warnings overlooked, and a crew afraid of a man who once wielded power, but now reduced to bias. Bernard Watkins bowed his head, acknowledging the truth. Lauren continued, "But I also saw the good. I saw a captain willing to change. I saw flight attendants embarrassed yet ready to correct their mistakes. I saw passengers stand up for what is right." Then she concluded, "I will not sue Horizon Air. I will reform Horizon Air. And I start today." The crowd erupted. A few moments of privacy, the exhaustion, and steel merging. As the press was guided away, Lauren stood alone briefly. She closed her eyes. A day of chaos. An entire system against her. A nation watching her every move. But in the darkness behind those eyelids, Lauren smiled. Not a victorious smile, but the smile of someone ready for the next chapter. She opened her eyes. And now she whispered, "It's time to rewrite Horizon." Her footsteps echoed across the polished floors of San Francisco Airport, each step a drumbeat, signaling the beginning of a revolution. The board meeting at 9 that evening was unlike any Horizon had ever experienced. Not because of the flight incident, not because of media pressure, but because for the first time in the airline's history, true power didn't rest in the hands of those at the head of the table. It rested in the hands of a 40-year-old black woman who entered the room with such calm authority that those seated below felt a tremor. Lauren Carter. No longer a passenger on Horizon 482. No longer a brilliant chief technology officer. No longer the woman underestimated in an economy seat. Today she was the one with the authority to shape the future of the entire airline. The boardroom door closed, and Horizon faced its naked truth. On the wall, a large screen displayed charts. Horizon stock down 17% in just 3 hours. The press called it the worst racial discrimination event in aviation this year. Hashtag Duarte Horizon remained top 3 nationwide. CEO Robert Hale stood at the head of the table, hands trembling slightly as he closed his files. "Thank you all for coming." His voice was hoarse, and especially, "Thank you, Lauren, for preventing that flight from becoming a disaster." Watkins, the board chairman, stood, eyes sweeping the room. Today our airline revealed its deepest failures, embedded discrimination, operational stubbornness, and the arrogance of those who thought they could not be wrong. Heads bowed. Lauren stood straight, hands resting lightly on the back of her chair, the posture of someone who needed no authority to wield power. "Before I speak, I want everyone to hear this." She scanned each person. "I am not here for revenge. I am here to rebuild." The room fell utterly silent. Lauren outlined Horizon's failings, the things no system could fix without starting with people. She activated the Sky Shield display on the wall. Flight 482 data appeared. Warnings disabled by Captain Price procedures. Overridden maintenance reports falsified. "This is Price's doing," Lauren said. A board member paler than paper stammered. "We're sorry we didn't know." Lauren turned eyes fixed on him. Not knowing is not innocence. Not knowing means you did not want to know. Her words hit the room like a heavy stone, dropping onto still water. Lauren continued. "Horizon does not need an apology. Horizon needs a complete overhaul." Watkins nodded. "And we want you, Lauren, to lead that overhaul, an offer not everyone would ever receive. And no one was more deserving at this moment than her. A new title, but in reality, unprecedented authority." Watkins slid a thicker envelope toward Lauren. "We propose appointing you executive chairwoman of Horizon Air with the highest authority over culture operations and safety." Hale added, "You will oversee the entire training system personnel and Sky Shield deployment." A long silence enveloped the room. Lauren opened the envelope. White paper. Horizon's silver-blue logo, her name in bold. She looked up. "Before I sign," Lauren said, "I want one condition." Watkins held his breath. "Speak." Lauren placed the envelope down, voice deep but resonant like an airplane engine slicing through the sky. "I want Horizon to be the most diverse, transparent, and safe airline in America. No more concealment. No more excuses, no more patchwork. Everyone will be accountable at every level." Hale nodded, agreed. Lauren signed. Her pen hit the paper like a laser engraving steel. A new chapter began. And then the part no one expected, the part only a true leader would consider. Lauren bent slightly, retrieving a thin file from her bag. "I have one more request," she said. All eyes on her, she opened the folder. The Angela Carter Scholarship Program for young women of color, pursuing aviation engineers, pilots, managers. She glanced at the small photo, clipped inside a woman in a flight attendant uniform, the warmest smile imaginable. Her mother. Lauren inhaled. "We cannot change the past, but we can protect the future for those who come after." Watkins pursed his lips, not out of emotion, but out of respect. "Horizon will fully fund this program, and it will bear your mother's name." Lauren closed her eyes briefly. In that moment, she knew her mother was somewhere in the skies smiling. That night, a nationwide change began from that small boardroom. By the end of the meeting near midnight, the news had spread. Horizon had terminated. Captain Price. Sky Shield would be fully deployed across the system. Lauren Carter had become executive chairwoman, and Horizon committed to reforming its culture from the ground up. A wave of conversation swept across America. Not just about the flight, but about something deeper, who truly has the right to belong in the sky. And at the airport that night, a small encounter created immense hope. As Lauren left the boardroom, she met Maya in the hallway leading to the parking lot. Maya still wore her grey sweatshirt, clutching the worn Stanford file. Ms. Lauren. Her eyes shone brighter than the overhead lights. Lauren approached smiling in a way that dissolved the fatigue of the day. "You're still awake. I wanted to wait for you. I just got an email. Stanford said they'll let me interview again tomorrow morning." Lauren smiled lightly. "Good. You deserve the opportunity." Maya hesitated. "But how can I ever thank you?" Lauren placed a hand on her shoulder, gaze gentle but firm, "by becoming the lawyer you dream of, by fighting for those without a voice, by using your intelligence to lift others. That is how you repay me." Maya nodded, tears falling that she did not wipe. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of something new being born. Epilogue: the night sky and tomorrow's flight. Lauren stepped into the parking lot, looking up. The clouds had cleared. The sky stretched wide, black deep and full of stars. She remembered her mother's words. "You were born to do great things." As a night breeze blew past, Lauren smiled. "I am doing it, Mum." Tomorrow she would board Horizon Flight 001, the first plane bearing the new logo, Horizon Sky Shield. Tomorrow Captain Jenkins would pilot it. Tomorrow the press would ask her, "What gives you your strength?" And tomorrow a new journey would begin. A journey no longer about merely belonging in the sky, but about opening it to all who are worthy. Lauren closed her car door. Street lights reflected gold on her face. A face no longer a symbol of a flight, but a symbol of a fairer future. Horizon 482 had landed, but Lauren Carter's journey had only just begun.